Good evening. This is how we do it on my budget, folks. Holding the boards. My slideshow. That's all you need. Don't need anything else. It doesn't take long, does it, for people to jump on board, shall we say, for 8 years. It is 8 years. I checked on my thing. The first time I screamed, "It's been submerged!" It was in 2017. 2017, I've been screaming the same things. Not about the speed of light, that's only been 2 or 3 years. When I had the number, I had the sun's diameter, 1,390,000 kilometers on the board. So always playing with numbers a few years ago. And I had the sun's diameter on the board. And I had the speed of light on the board. And I said to myself, what? Hang on a minute. And I divided the sun's diameter by the speed of light, and lo and behold, we get the number 4.6, and that's second. It takes the sun 4.6 seconds to radiate its own light, the distance of its own diameter. And that, I assure you, is ridiculous. It's impossible. Nothing in the universe takes 4.6 seconds to radiate its own light, the distance of its own diameter. On your mark, get set, go! 1, 2, 3, 4.6 seconds. That is how long it takes the sun to radiate its own light the distance of its own diameter. Now, a few months ago, I put the bulb up to the sun so they were exactly the same size, right? I was in perfect position. Both of them had the same diameter. Now you're telling me that behind this bulb, the sun up there, that is in that moment the same size as the bulb, because I've overlapped it onto the sun behind this bulb is radiating light at this speed. 1, 2, 3, 4.6 seconds. It's impossible. It's stupid, all right? It doesn't matter that the sun has a diameter of 1,390,000 kilometers and the bulb is only tiny. The sun that is behind this light bulb will radiate its light at the same rate. Bang! But it's the sun. Pound for pound, pi. It's a mathematical constant. You guys can argue with it all you want. You do not understand the science. Obviously, you can't understand the science, right? It's a sphere, a light source. It doesn't get slower the bigger it gets. People understand that. They radiate absolute light. The bigger and more powerful they are, the further that light will radiate. Not faster, further. Slam dunk. The sun up behind this bulb in the sky, radiating its light, 4.6 seconds per diameter. It's ridiculous. Anyway, this isn't about that, this is about the pyramids. Right, let me get that off of the board. That is what triggered my son. I went, what? 4.6 seconds, and I started screaming straight away and haven't stopped since. It's an absurdity. It's such ridiculousness, right? That It's insane. That 34 stays there. .6 seconds. What's wrong with people? Oh yeah, but the sun is really big and really powerful, and it doesn't take 4.6 seconds. Nothing takes 4.6 seconds to radiate light the distance of its diameter, folks. Mamma mia. About common sense. That one is purely about common sense. Now, what was I saying? It doesn't take long before people jump on board, does it? On board what, they say? Is he talking trains now? No, I'm not talking trains. 2 days. It's 2 days old. It's called. What if the pyramids were built before the Ice Age? 44,000 views 2 days ago. What if the pyramids were built before the Ice Age? Something that I have been saying, I don't know how long, but 44,000 views. So it's okay when somebody else says it, but when this guy in this shed, when he says it, doesn't mean anything. They're still way behind, right? They're way behind. These pyramids are hundreds of thousands of years old. If not, give yourself some 6 zeros and start there. Listen to this.
Picture the desert at night, the air cooling fast after the sun's retreat, and the faint rustle of wind across sand that has been here far longer than any human memory. Somewhere beneath your feet, beneath the drifting dunes and the cracked limestone, the bones of a story are waiting. We've been told for generations that the pyramids of Giza rose around 4,500 years ago under the rule of kings whose names are still carved into temple walls. But what if that story is only the final act of a much older tale? What if these colossal shapes were already ancient when the first hieroglyph was scratched into stone? We might already be picturing stonecutters in white linen skirts, the sun blazing down, oxen pulling sledges. But imagine something stranger. Imagine the same scene, except the air is cooler, the Nile is wider, and the horizon is dotted not with sand but with patches of grass and scattered trees. Somewhere far away, ice sheets the size of continents grind slowly toward the sea. It's not the Egypt you learned about in school. This is Egypt before Egypt, before pharaohs had names. In recent decades, a handful of geologists and historians have looked at the Giza Plateau and noticed things that don't quite fit the official narrative.
Don't what?
The limestone enclosure around the Great Sphinx, for example, is weathered in a way that suggests it has endured centuries of...
Don't quite fit the...
In school, this is Egypt before Egypt, before pharaohs had names. In recent decades, a handful of geologists and historians have looked at the Giza Plateau and noticed things that don't quite fit the official narrative.
Things that don't quite fit the official narrative. What would that be? Maybe it's the fact that Pyramid Giza on her own weighs approximately 6.5 million tons. That's the equivalent weight of 63 Nimitz, battle-ready Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. That does look a little bit out of place, doesn't it? Considering that when you add the other two, there's 13.5 million tons. The equivalent weight of 132 battle-ready Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. All of that stone, and not one single explanation, that's the Nimitz by the way, for how even one stone was carved out of any quarry by Egyptians wielding only copper hand tools. So this is, it's ridiculous.
Or pharaohs had names. In recent decades, a handful of geologists and historians have looked at the Giza Plateau and noticed things that don't quite fit the official narrative. The limestone enclosure around the Great Sphinx, for
It's-
example, is weathered in...
It's comical. It's actually comical. They are having a laugh. I don't know if this guy talking is in on it, right? Or he's just...
in a way that suggests it has endured centuries of heavy rainfall. Rainfall that hasn't been common in this part of the world for thousands of years. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, famously argued in the 1990s that the Sphinx could be much older than dynastic Egypt, possibly dating back to the end of the last ice age. Mainstream Egyptologists pushed back hard, pointing out the lack of artifacts or inscriptions to support such a date. Historians are still debating whether these erosion patterns are the fingerprints of an ancient climate, or simply the result of wind and sand over time.
Look.
It's an odd thing to consider,
It's so stupid. Wind and sand. Wind and sand. Are you kidding me, right? This is what I'm talking about. And the thing is, these are the things that I hear so many people say. It's like they say something and everybody just uses that. That's what they use. Same as with the other person, Mr. Tyson. Everybody just copies what he says. And most of it is illogical nonsense. Look, people actually said to me, oh no, it was Napoleon Bonaparte with cannonballs. That massive water erosion mark on the north, south, east and west faces of Pyramid Giza. And it's really, really, really strange because below that obvious erosion, water erosion mark at the top of Pyramid Giza, below that mark, there's all of that erosion, isn't there? There's all of this. All of that. It's funny, isn't it? So we've got that there, obviously really deep. Look, I wonder what's created. It's going to be water, hasn't it? That's soft, that's smooth. That is the only part that was sticking out, a bird haven. And this has all been eroded by water. And when you look at the others, look how strange. Pyramid Giza, it's got the smoothish, you could say it's smooth, couldn't we, really? Right? And then below it, we have the erosion, where that's where the water stayed. And then below that, like that, does actually come over because of the angle. Giza's way behind, it's high. And the same with the other one. If you look at that very closely, there is no doubt whatsoever. It's so obvious, right? So this was just, and then it slowly receded, and that is why all of the bottoms of the pyramids are all the same. They have the exact same erosion mark. That water has dropped ever so slowly, possibly over hundreds of thousands of years. Laugh, people, laugh. Don't forget, I don't have chains on my mind. I see what is, not what is expected of me to see. Look how deep. Look how deep that is there. Look. People saying that people came up, scurrying up at night, taking bricks down. What is wrong with people? Why on earth would anybody climb up that far when they have all of that? It's just so, again, it's one of these things that if I was doing this on a bus, I'd be throwing people out of the back and out of the front, out of the windows. Because it's stupid. Cannonballs. Cannonballs. Wind and sand. Very abrasive, somebody said. On the north, south, east and west faces, and all of the other pyramids, none of them have this. Or is it just, that's the sand blasting altitude, is it? With the wind and the sand on all four faces. Guys, it's giving me the shits right now, having to go over this again, right? What else do we have? Earthquakes, lightning. And it's just one thing after another. People, you've heard them say these things, and then you think it's the right thing to say, but they're so stupid. It's water erosion. Water erosion. And we know the Egyptians didn't do any of it because just Giza alone weighs the equivalent of 63 of these. Six and a half million tons. 25,000 Egyptians, that works out to be 260 tons per person, the equivalent of 4 Abraham's main battle tanks. This whole thing is so stupid. God, I've got to keep it light-hearted, but it's so difficult sometimes, right? Now let's carry on listening to this. It starts off okay, like, yeah, welcome on board, mate. Come on, here we go. You're still way behind, but come on, join us. I hope you weren't one of these people that was claiming everything about the kings and the Khufu and how they used them as burial chambers and this, because so much knowledge being claimed, to then suddenly be saying, maybe they really, really are ancient. Does that mean all of that knowledge that you were claiming? See, this is the thing. This is obvious, right? And it's going to come out. Of course it's going to come out. People aren't that thick, right? You can see it. But don't ever forget who the people were, telling you that they knew, claiming knowledge that couldn't be known, as if, and the papyrus, and yada, yada, yada. It just goes on and on. All these views, this has got 44,000 views already, 2 days. I've been screaming this for 7-8 years, right? And more than what he's just touching, scratching the surface, right? Guys, these have been submerged, hundreds of thousands, if not. You can talk 1 million easy. I bet my life on it right now that these pyramids are closer to 1 million years old than they are 4,500 years old. 4,500 years ago, they looked exactly the same as they do now. It's ridiculous. Right, let's listen up.
Especially when you realise how much of history rests on the assumption that human civilization is relatively young. Most textbooks start the story of advanced humanity around 5,000 years ago, with the rise of city-states and organised agriculture. But every so often, an artefact or a ruin slips into view and seems to whisper, quietly but insistently, that we might have overlooked something. Think of Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, a complex of massive carved stones erected 11,600 years ago, long before the supposed invention of agriculture. Its existence doesn't prove that the pyramids are older than we think, but it does remind us that humans were shaping stone with remarkable skill deep into prehistory. There's a strange comfort in the official story. It's neat, it's chronological, and it fits well with what's already in museums. But the human mind has a weakness for neatness. It prefers smooth surface.
The human mind doesn't have a weakness for neatness. It's you people who keep claiming you know every single thing. Oh look, this grain of sand. Oh, this has been blown from the west at 10 o'clock. It's just this. I can feel. Is there anything on that? No. I can feel it coming. I can feel it coming. This started off. Okay, they're finally coming to the party with a little bit of ancient, a different era, hundreds of thousands of years, not 4,500. But then I got to about just after that minute 34, and I was getting ever so angry with the man. I really was. You'll see why. Let's just do a couple more minutes down on this end and then we'll go to 34.
This is to rough edges, and history, real history, is full of rough edges. Oh, if you stand at the base of the Great Pyramid and run your fingers over its weathered blocks, you're touching stone that was ancient even in the age of Homer. Those stones have been rained on, baked, shaken by earthquakes, and brushed by the hands of countless pilgrims, scholars, and looters. They've seen the stars shift in the night sky, the desert expand and contract, and the Nile change its course. It's easy to imagine that the desert hides many things. Odd fact, in 2013, archaeologists in the Egyptian desert uncovered a complete Roman-era ship buried hundreds of miles from the sea. A reminder that what lies beneath the sand isn't always what we expect. And if a ship can survive in the desert for nearly 2,000 years, why couldn't something far older, an earlier layer of the pyramids themselves, be waiting under those limestone blocks? The challenge is that stone is both patient and deceptive. A block of weathered limestone might be 20 years old or 20,000.
Or
And unless it carries an
200,000.
inscription, the truth can be hard to pin down.
Listen to them.
That's part of what makes the Ice Age theory so tantalising.
Listen.
It offers an older, messier history, one that doesn't...
Listen to this. See how they switch. I've heard that voice before, right? Saying about the Egyptians this and the Egyptians that, and I apologise if it's the wrong voice, but he sounds a lot like him. And now he's saying, not so sure now, that these things are hard to pin down. After spending the last God knows how long telling people that the Egyptians did build the pyramids. There's Egyptology books over there. Oh no, what's going to happen now that they're saying, what if the pyramids were built before the Ice Age? Egyptology. I feel myself getting rather revved up. Honestly, I cannot listen to these programs. I cannot listen to these programs.
fit neatly into the boxes of dynastic timelines. But it also leaves us with vast empty spaces where certainty should be. And in those spaces, imagine...
See, hear that? Where certainty should be. There's no certainty anywhere. You go back a couple of hundred years and you're starting to speculate. All of this stuff that they claim, this knowledge. Honestly, they know nothing.
Imagination starts to take root. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I'm doing here.
I never say that. If you like is it because I get a little bit, like I'm a bit, is that why, like, I bet he's got loads of subscribers. He's only 2 days old. He's probably got more subscribers than I've had views, right? Why is that? Because I'm some, how do I describe myself? Middle-aged? No. I'm some young guy in his shed, no qualifications, and people don't rate me. But I guarantee you I run rings around these people. Honestly, I've been screaming this for 8 years, and they're just starting to go. Apart from Mr. Hancock, he's on the ball, mostly, I think. Yeah. But they can't work this out. They cannot work that out. People, they are insulting your intelligence, right? It's the same as the speed of light in the solar eclipse.
It's a small way to let me know you're out there, somewhere.
So please join my channels, and please, if you enjoy what I'm doing, even though I'm sometimes a little bit brash, I don't fuck about. I use common sense and logic, and I do not mind swimming against the tide. There are questions that need to be asked, and I've asked them, nobody answers me. You know why that is, don't you? Because they're full of horseradish. So you heard what he said. See, I haven't got that bedside. I can have that bedside manner, but not when I'm listening to these things.
Under your own patch of night sky. And I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? And what time is it where you are? As you think about that, picture the pyramids not as the crowning achievement of a young civilization, but as something inherited, something that stood silent for centuries before being claimed by the pharaohs we know by name. Imagine them as survivors, their sharp edges dulled by thousands of years of wind and rain before the Old Kingdom even began. You don't have to believe it. You only have to let the possibility drift across your mind like a thin cloud over a bright moon. After all, history is not only what happened, it's also what we're willing to consider. If you have only ever known Egypt through photographs, documentaries, or perhaps a single visit in the height of summer, you might believe this land has always been dry. The kind of dryness that draws lines across your lips, that makes your eyes ache under the sun's glare. The Giza Plateau, with its beige expanse and its colossal monuments, seems to belong to a world utterly removed from the gentleness of rain. Yet, if you trace the scars on its stones, you might begin to suspect that water once had a much more intimate conversation with this landscape. The Great Sphinx, guardian of the plateau, is the most eloquent witness. Its massive lion's body and human face are carved directly into the bedrock, and around it lies an enclosure, walls of limestone whose surfaces tell a story no inscription records. These walls are etched with deep vertical channels, grooves that curl and smooth as they descend, the kind of shapes that moving water tends to leave behind. Geologists who study erosion patterns have learned to distinguish the signature of wind from that of rain. Wind erosion is horizontal, sharp-edged, like a blade scraping in one direction.
Wind erosion. See, what they're trying to say is wind erosion, horizontal, with a sharp edge. Look, that isn't wind fricking it. Look. If it was just wind erosion, right, it would be all kind of smooth, wouldn't it? It wouldn't have ridges like that going through it, and nor would all of that down there, which is all horizontal, and they're just talking about these little vertical lines. They're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. How about those horizontal patterns? Look. About those? Or was that rain that just washed it all off like it was flour or icing sugar coming off of a cake? Sorry for my attitude, but I've been listening to this thing for about half an hour and I am ready to throw people off of the bus even though we're not on a bus. Seriously. I thought, oh, here's one, and then straight away you could, it's just, and straight away, can't help themselves. Starting to claim knowledge that can't be known. It's almost like a disease.
Water, by contrast, softens. It curls its way down, wearing pockets and folds, creating a kind of rippling effect in the stone. Robert Schoch, a Boston University geologist, first made international headlines in the 1990s by suggesting that these patterns could not have been made by mere centuries of wind and sand. In his view, they spoke of centuries of heavy rainfall of the kind that has not been common here for at least 7,000 years. Schoch's conclusion was bold. If the Sphinx's enclosure showed signs of water erosion, then the monument must have been carved long before the time of Pharaoh Khafra, perhaps even before the end of the last ice age, when the Sahara was a land of grass and rivers. This idea met fierce resistance from Egyptologists, whose timeline for the Sphinx was anchored.
Now, just don't forget one thing. You've got to listen to what is being said. They're talking about 5,000 years ago. The Sahara was an oasis, right? That's what he said.
Schoch's conclusion was bold. If the Sphinx's enclosure showed signs of water erosion, then the monument must have been carved long before the time of Pharaoh Khafra, perhaps even before the end of the last ice age, when the Sahara was a land of grass and rivers. This idea met fierce resistance from Egyptologists, whose time...
Now, right here, how do they know this? I'm being dead serious now. All they have are fossils, okay? Now, this radiocarbon dating, this half-life of freaking 4.5 billion years for uranium-238, garbage. how on earth is this worked out over a couple of decades? Because of a certain decay rate, 4.5 billion years. It's this constant stream of illogical rubbish that people are believing. And once you believe it, they feed you more and more. And now there's freaking Hippocrococangarella frogs flying about, aren't there?
The line for the Sphinx was anchored in archaeological evidence from the Old Kingdom. The argument went like this. The Sphinx resembles the face of Khafra's statues. It sits next to his pyramid complex, and the surrounding temples use limestone blocks quarried from the very pit in which the Sphinx rests. Therefore, the most logical...
Teacher, do you know how they were quarried, the limestone blocks? As you brought it up, or are we just going to go straight to the how they built?
Explanation is that Khafra ordered its construction around 2500 BCE. Any erosion, they said, could be the result of wind, sand, or even the occasional flood caused by rising groundwater in ancient times. Historians are still debating whether the weathering is a clue to a much earlier origin or simply a byproduct of later natural forces. The truth is frustratingly slippery. Stone holds its age in ways that resist easy measurement.
Listen. We know that Giza alone weighs the equivalent of 100,000 Abraham's main battle tanks. 100,000. If 25,000 Egyptians built Giza, that means they each have the equivalent weight of 4 tanks each to first quarry out of somewhere using just modest copper hand tools. So when they say the truth is slippery,
dating it is not like dating a piece of wood or bone with radiocarbon techniques. Without an inscription saying carved in the year 10, the argument must rely on interpretation, geology versus archaeology, climate science versus cultural context. To complicate matters further, the Sphinx is not the only structure with puzzling erosion. Nearby, blocks from the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple, massive limestone and granite constructions, show similar weathering.
now I was getting just agitated because I listened to it, and it's just what they always do. He talks about this stuff like he was there, right? And then this, and it's like, but the thing is, everyone believes it. Well, there's 44,000 views in 2 days.
Aboriginal stories describe ancient coastlines and islands that were submerged more than 7,000 years ago, details that match geological reconstructions. If this is possible there, why not along the Nile? Perhaps the priests of Egypt's earliest temples recited verses about a great flood not as metaphor, but as history. History that had already slipped so far into the past that it took on the tone of myth. If the pyramids, or their earliest foundations, predate the Ice Age's end, then their builders might have lived through such a flood. Picture it, standing on the Giza Plateau, watching the waters advance year after year, carrying debris from far upstream, swallowing fields and villages. People would have retreated toward higher ground, first to the ridges, then to the hills, and finally to the monuments themselves, the highest and most solid things in the land. For a time, the pyramids might have been islands in a drowned world. Even after the waters receded, the memory of that inundation could have remained, passed down.
See? Strange, isn't it? Everything I've been saying. But this comes along and it gets 44,000 views. Maybe it is my bedside manner. I'm not going to sacrifice any of my content or the way I do my content for anybody, right? Because I shouldn't need to. They want me to pay. So my stuff reaches a bigger audience, right? But there's the absurdities, and they're getting paid because of the amount of numbers, right? Honestly, these people are way behind. Way behind.
and through generations. Over centuries, as language changed and the specifics blurred, the flood might have taken on a divine quality, a punishment from the gods, or a cosmic reset.
Here we go.
Later civilizations might have looked at the ancient stoneworks and assumed they had been built in response to the disaster, perhaps to honour the deities who spared the survivors. Odd fact, some ancient Egyptian temple reliefs show boats large enough to carry multi-ton obelisks along the Nile. These massive barges, built of cedar from Lebanon, were technological marvels in their own right. It's tempting to imagine that even in pre-dynastic times, boat-building traditions could have supported large-scale evacuations or movements of people during great floods. The universality of flood myths suggests that they are more than just human imagination at work. They may be the collective memory of a species that has seen the sea reclaim the land more than once. For the Nile Valley, such a flood could have been both a catastrophe and a turning point, destroying settlements, but also perhaps preserving the largest and most enduring structures by isolating them above the reach of the waters. By the time the Old Kingdom rose, these stories might have been fragments, recited in rituals, half believed, but still potent. The pharaohs could have seen themselves as the inheritors of that survival, the rulers of a land reborn from the flood. Whether they knew the true age of the monuments they claimed is uncertain, but the stones would have stood through it all, watching the waters come and go, holding in their silent mass the memory of a world that drowned. Close your eyes and imagine the Sahara, not as the endless heat-shimmering expanse of gold and beige we know today, but as a landscape alive with green. Rivers snake across wide floodplains, their banks shaded by acacia trees. Herds of gazelle and antelope scatter at the approach of human hunters. Crocodiles slide silently through slow-moving water. In the distance, the surface of a great lake glints under the afternoon sun. This is not a fantasy. It is what much of the Sahara looked like for thousands of years during the African humid period.
How do they know? See, this is it right here. Oh, because the fossils are, we're talking thousands and thousands of years ago. They don't even know who built the freaking pyramids. But they know that the Sahara was lovely. Great place to stop over for a weekend if you're travelling over across freaking Africa. Anything over 300-400 years ago, it's speculation, right? This fossil thing, they're not freaking encyclopedias, they're bits of rock. The knowledge being claimed that cannot be known.
Between roughly 14,500 and 5,500 years ago, subtle changes in the Earth's orbit altered the monsoon patterns of Africa. The rains shifted northward, drenching the Sahara and turning it into a vast savanna. Satellite images today reveal the ghostly traces of ancient rivers and lake beds beneath the sand, like the veins of a dried leaf. Archaeologists working in what is now the deepest desert have uncovered tools, pottery shards, and rock art depicting animals that could never survive there today. Elephants, giraffes, and even hippos. These finds tell us that the Sahara was once home to thriving communities. Odd fact, some of the rock art shows boats, long, sleek vessels with high prows, carved into cliff faces hundreds of miles from any present-day coastline. These are not the papyrus skiffs of the later Nile, but sturdier-looking craft, perhaps designed for river travel or for crossing large...
Look. He'll go in and he'll gosh on for 2 hours. I haven't seen much further than here because of the 34 thing. What you have here, you don't need, goes into all of these, we'll go to sleep explanations. Guys, what you have here is some uber ancient rocks, right? These things were built by people hundreds of thousands, if not into the million years. This kind of erosion, look, if these pyramids were brand new, forget about the white freaking myth, because that never happened, which is, see, these are the things that you guys always used to throw at me. So who put where have the white stones gone? You're asking me. they never existed in the first place. This stuff is made up. It's made up. All of this is made up. All of this right here, it's made up. The Egyptians could not have. These things are ancient, a different era, a different time. Civilization or what? We do not know who built them. Did they look like us? Who knows? This stuff is beyond our beyond your comprehension, right? This stuff, this is ancient. This is the definition of ancient. That is long time. Water erosion, almost a totally different planet. It's that long ago. There's been at least one other civilization here. And this, right, this is the thing. This raises another question. If that is the case, right, see, this is how you've got to look at these things. It's obviously that intelligent beings built this stuff. They were either extremely strong or they were very clever, okay? They disappeared. These things are ancient. Ancient. Whoever lived in these times, if they were lucky enough to get up onto the top of these pyramids, that would have been it. They would have had nowhere else to go unless there were boats, because they wouldn't have had any food, right? This is about 80 to 90 meters up. That's a lot of water, and for a long time. North, south, east and west faces of Pyramid Giza. That's not freaking sand and wind. These things, right? There's always this talk about extraterrestrials and other beings, other life. This right here, this is where the question comes. People, not people, beings built this stuff. Then they disappeared, they're gone, right? There's no record. This stuff is, you think the Bible times are old, right? This is, could be 2 or 3 ice ages, hundreds of thousands of years. This stuff, this is a long time ago. So if they did disappear, where did we come from? Because then you've got to think, well, hang on a minute. If they disappeared, did evolution start after that again? These are the questions nobody knows, nobody has the answers to, but they just keep filling your ice cream cups up with more and more fudge triple chocolate ice cream, and your mouth is stuffed and you're always full of absurdities, right? With no time to ask a question because you're eating truffles, frozen truffles. Guys, this is evidence of a civilization in another freaking 1, 2, 3 ice ages ago. This stuff rewrites history. It doesn't rewrite history, it's just correct history, because the amount of rubbish, oh, that sounds good when it's on the Egyptology book, doesn't it? Ooh. One more. Ooh. The absurdities are front and center. It drives me nuts. It's frustrating seeing through all of this. It's got there's no cloak on it for me. I can see things exactly as they are. 4,500 years ago? Look! Can you not see? Look. Again, lucky we're not on a bus right now because it would be emptied in seconds view. Look. This stuff that you're looking at here. Settle. Those 2.5 ton stone, 2.5 ton stone, 2.5 ton stone. Every single one of those little things is a 2.5 ton stone. There are 2.3 million of them. 25,000 Egyptians. Listen, this is so out of the ballpark, ridiculous, right? That, look, it's insane. I cannot get over the fact that people think that these are 4,500 years old and that is just a bit of wind and sand erosion. Breathe. See, this is what happens when I watch these programs. It frustrates me because of the way they go on, like they were there, like they know, but the amount of people who just accept it and then even use some of that stuff and argue with things that I'm saying. None of it is your own knowledge. It's all second-hand stuff. I am not claiming knowledge that cannot be known. I know where all of the knowledge being claimed that can't be known is, and it's everywhere. God, definitely got pushed off on the wrong planet.
Lakes. It is a strange, almost haunting image. A fleet of boats sailing across what is now one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. The African humid period would have transformed Egypt's environment as well. The Nile's floodplain would have been lush and expansive, capable of supporting large populations with relative ease. Seasonal floods would have been predictable and generous, replenishing the soil. The desert plateaus, including the Giza Plateau, would have been far less hostile, perhaps dotted with grasses and shrubs rather than bare rock and drifting sand. If the earliest phases of the pyramids, or their foundations, were conceived during this Green Age, their construction would have been far more feasible than in the hyper-arid conditions of later Egypt. Abundant water could have been used not only for sustaining the workforce, but also for practical purposes, like lubricating sledges carrying heavy stones. Food would have been plentiful.
Teacher, those heavy stones in the sledge and the water to make it easy, so it's like ice. Where did these stones, how were the stones quarried exactly before they were put on the sleds? Nothing. No.
Reducing the logistical challenges of feeding thousands of workers. Transporting stone might have been easier too. Boats could have navigated not just the Nile, but the seasonal rivers and lakes that crisscross the region. Historians are still debating how quickly the African humid period ended. Some evidence suggests a gradual drying over centuries.
What evidence?
Other data points to abrupt shift.
What evidence? What evidence? What evidence? And what data points to an abrupt shift? None of it. There is no data or evidence for any of it. There just isn't. Where is it? On what? How? Where is this data? This is what people aren't understanding. You just believe everything they tell you. Even the ice, the freaking ice cores that they go on about. I've done this one before as well. So you think the ice goes down, 4 Ks, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 Ks deep. They go right down to the bottom with their ice core, with their drills, come up with a big chunk of ice right from the bottom, and then they cut them, don't they? And then they've got these little cuts. Like they say, yeah, this could be 350 meters deep or 3.5 k's deep. The only thing, these bits of ice, when they cut these little chunks and then look inside to see what's in it, the only thing it's going to tell them is what was in the local atmosphere at the time that piece froze. That's it. It's not going to tell them how old it is. The thing is, they say it's, what was it, 800,000 years old, all of the ice or something, right? How do they don't know this. The bottom could be 2 billion years old, couldn't it? And it could have come up for another 2 billion years and then stopped and then melted for another 500 million years and then up and then the last, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years, it's just steadily grown. And it maybe even got to there and then thawed because it was so hot and it's like all over again. They don't know when it's been hot because the ice melts. So how do they know? Listen, they are just filling people's heads with rubbish. The ice cores, the only information a piece of ice can give the person who is holding it is what was in the local atmosphere the time that water froze into the ice. That's it. That's it. Even if it's this thing where they have 2, 3, well, obviously there's layer after layer after layer after layer. How? Who knows if when it was coming up thousands of years that it got to here and then it was hot for 20,000 years and it drops all the way back down again. Listen, the only records of snow and ice that this civilization know about are the ones that were recorded while we were here. Claiming this stuff older, it's once again claiming knowledge that cannot be known. And over they do it again and again and again. Oh God, this is really giving me the frickin' poops.
Possibly triggered by changes in ocean currents or large-scale climatic events. What is certain is that the Sahara's transformation from green to gold was devastating for the people who lived there. Rivers vanished, lakes shrank into muddy basins, and fertile land turned to dust. Communities would have been forced to migrate, seeking refuge in areas where water still flowed, like the Nile Valley. This migration could have brought skilled builders, craftsmen and traders into closer contact with those already living along the Nile. They may have carried with them knowledge from other parts of the Green Sahara, techniques for working stone, architectural ideas, or religious symbols. Over time, these influences could have merged with local traditions, giving rise to something entirely new. Odd fact, in southern Egypt's Nabta Playa, archaeologists have found a series of stone circles and alignments dating back at least 7,000 years, possibly earlier. Some of these stones are aligned to mark the summer solstice.
So, 7,000 years or possibly earlier? Which one is it? You don't know.
Suggesting a sophisticated understanding of astronomy long before the appearance of written records in Egypt. It is tempting to imagine that such knowledge was part of a broader cultural network spread across the Green Sahara. When the rains finally failed for good, the desert returned with a vengeance.
Oh.
What had been a continent-spanning grassland became a barrier, cutting Egypt off from much of Africa to the west.
Wow, I did
Trade
not know
routes
that.
disappeared, and the Green Sahara slipped into memory. But if monumental structures had been built during that earlier age, they would have remained standing on high ground while the land around them turned to sand. Picture the pyramids, not surrounded by an ocean of desert, but rising from...
It's just, oh! Just goes on and on and on. Oh, wow, really? Nothing. All of it is speculation. All of it is speculation. There's only one thing that we have in front of us. And the weight, the erosion patterns, can see that they're ancient and clearly impossible for the Egyptians wielding copper hand tools, even one stone out of any rock face wall, using just copper hand tools, folks. These people talk rubbish. It pays the bills. People are making a living by claiming knowledge that cannot be known, and then that knowledge is then getting passed down, and we're cha-chinging all of the way to the bank. Look, I really get the shits with this stuff, because I see right through all of it, and the same as the speed of light and relativity, guys. I'm gonna call it there. And remember, where are you watching from right now? If you enjoy my content, let me know. I'm going to improve my bedside manner. I will in the future. It's not really that bad. It just gets really frustrating, the amount of time they're wasting. And everybody's believing all of the absurdities.